Hey everyone. So welcome to week 3 of Sky Winter Quarter, and we're going to go over convolutional neural networks today. So during week 1, we went over a brief overview of neural networks. Last week, we went over deep neural networks, and now we're going to go into type of deep neural network called convolutional neural network. Kevin, could you just unfreeze the projector? Yeah. All right. So before we get into actually convolutional neural networks, let's go over a quick overview for those of you who may not have went to our past meetings, or maybe you guys just need a quick review. All right. So what is a neural network? Well, a neural network is basically a neuron. You can think of it as a representation, an abstract representation of a neuron. And so if you think of what a neuron does, it has a series of inputs, right, in your brain. It has a series of input signals from your brain, and it takes that through various inputs. So you see how you have the inputs here, and it performs some calculation, some operation on them. I'm not a bio major. I don't exactly know what operation it does, but it does some operation, and it produces some output, and that outputs to another neuron. Maybe it outputs to your hand. Maybe it outputs to something else. And if you think of it in a more kind of mathematical terms, you can think of it like a machine, right? Your machine has some sort of input. You have some rule or some operation that you know that your machine does, and you have some output. And so that is basically what a neuron or a neural network is. And so if we think of our representation of a neural network, we have 3 main components. We have inputs, we have whatever calculation we're performing inside the neural network, and we have an output. So our input layer, we have our input layer here, and that's the first layer in our neural network. And that just gets, we have some number value, we have some data. We have some data that we input into the neural network, and we forward propagate it. So I'm going to go a little bit more into forward propagation for those of you who might not know, but we forward propagate it through the neural network. We perform calculations, and we get some sort of output. What is our output? Well, our output is basically some pattern or some representation of the data that we got. What patterns could we find in the data that we got? And that's what a neural network does. An important feature about neural networks is also the fact that every neuron is connected to every neuron of the layer after it. So if you notice, it's fully connected. So a neural network is fully connected. Every neuron is connected to every other neuron. And again, as I just went over, we have the input layer. We have our hidden layers in the middle. So why they're called hidden layers is they perform calculations on the input data that we're performing, and we can add more and more hidden layers to our neural network to find different patterns, find different representations, and we finally have some output, and that's produced in our output layer over there on all the way to the right. So yeah, so that's our input layer right there. That's our hidden layer. We have 3 hidden layers here, but we can create neural networks with less hidden layers or more hidden layers. And then finally, we have our output layer. All right, so another important feature about neural networks we have here are weights. Right here, the weights are basically depicted as the arrows that actually connect a neuron to a neuron. But essentially, they are numerical values. They tell us, okay, how strong is our neuron's connection with the next neuron? How strong is the relationship between these neurons? The higher your weight value, maybe the stronger the connection between your neurons. All right, so I know I said I was going to go a little bit into this earlier, but we have 2 main ways that a neural network actually performs its calculations. We have forward propagation and we have backward propagation. So forward propagation is actually the process of inputting some values into the neural network and getting an output. Right, that's forward propagation. We're propagating forward through the network. But we also have back propagation. So once we have some set of outputs, we're like, okay, how how do we fine tune the neural network to get the closest values to what we want, to get the highest accuracy predictions? So that's backpropagation, where we take the outputs, take the loss from the outputs, and we propagate it backward throughout the neural network, and we adjust the weights to kind of get more accurate predictions. All right, so what is a problem with traditional neural networks? Well, let's say we have an image. We have an image here. And our eye naturally looks for patterns, textures, shapes, objects, edges. We're trying to recognize what the image is. And how do we do that? We look at what's in the image. Like we see, oh, there's some wheat here. There's some texture here. There's edges here. That circle might be the moon. These might be birds or planes because they're in the sky. We look for the color. We look for the edges. But traditional neural networks, they can't actually look at that. They don't have spatial awareness. They can't actually look for features in the image. So as you can see, patterns can be anything. They can be textures, they can be circles, they can be an edge. So you see this box here, that would be called an edge detector because we're detecting an edge there. And so traditional neural networks can't necessarily look for these patterns. And so that's why we have convolutional neural networks. So as you can see here, let's say we have 4 different images that we kind of input into our neural network. Well, even if they change, well, our eye naturally knows, okay, based on the features that are in this image, this is a cat. But a traditional neural network can't necessarily recognize that. And so that's why we have convolutional neural networks. We see these different pieces of the cat, and if we put them together, a convolutional neural network can be like, okay, this is a cat based on the different features, and use that spatial awareness to look for the different pixels and how they relate to one another. So how does it do that? Well, basically a CNN, or a convolutional neural network, has filters. And these filters essentially process the image, and we look for different features. The values of the filters can be learned, so we can train it, we can fine-tune the values of the filters to look for certain features. For example, like if we have a cat, we want to look for fur, we want to look for certain features, then let's say if we have a tree, we want to look for different features. So yeah, again, so CNNs can detect all the features that I just described earlier. It can detect the circles, it can detect the colors, it can detect the edges. So it's really useful for image detection. All right, so let's kind of get into the architecture of an actual CNN. Convolutional neural network has 2 main types of layers. We have convolutional layers and pooling layers, both of which I'm going to go into later. The results of the CNN is usually then put into a feed-forward neural network, which is, this is kind of inspired by the human eye. Again, we're trying to design a neural network architecture that can basically simulate what the human eye can see. All right, so let's assume this is our CNN. This is our convolutional neural network. And each layer is our convolutional layer. We can add more and more layers. I'm going to get a little bit into this later, but basically, let's say we have like a layer earlier in our convolutional neural network. It can maybe detect circles, squares. It can detect very simplistic things. But let's say if you go further and further into your convolutional network, the more layers you add, the more specific things that you can detect. For example, like textures. You can detect fur. Maybe you can detect ears. You can detect very specific things. So you can find more closer patterns in your data. So this is just an example of a convolutional neural network right here. Yep. All right. So let's get a little bit into filters. So a kernel is the matrix that's used as a filter that's passed over the image. So what do I mean by that? Like, what does a filter actually do? Well, let's say this is our image right here, right? And we have a 3x3 filter right there. So what a filter would do is basically convolve. Convolve, we're basically sliding through the image and calculating patterns in the pixel values. So this is called convolving, which is why we call it convolutional neural network. But we're basically, as you can see, we're like sliding through the image, and we're finding features and finding patterns in the data, and we're creating a new convolved feature. Different kernels can amplify features in an image, like different features in an image. So for example, here we have like a kind of a gray and a white box here. And based on our kernel, we amplified the white in the image. You can amplify different features based on what you're looking for and what you want to use to identify whatever's in the image. So if we go back to our convolutional layers, well, we want to think, if we're adding a new layer, we want to think, okay, how many filters do I want? And what size of a filter do I want, right? Because you might want a smaller filter to look for smaller features, or you might want to look at bigger groups of pixels and be like, okay, can I see something in these bigger groups of pictures? Is there a feature that I could see? All right. So let's take a little example. So we have a picture of a slug, and we're just taking a little portion. We're taking 9 pixels out of this image, and we have some pixel values over there. And we have our filter. So how would a convolutional neural network go about actually calculating the values of this image and maybe looking for patterns in the data? Well, it basically takes the dot product. And what is a dot product? It's a fairly simple formula. Basically, you're taking each square in this like 3 by 3 grid, and you're multiplying with the same associated square in the filter. So for example, you'd multiply 7.5 with 3. Then you'd add that to 10 times 2.5. Then you'd add that to 7.5 times 5, and on and on and on. So I just calculated the dot product for you guys. If you just math it all out, you're going to get negative 22.5. And that's just the new value of your new convolved image. All right. So I just gave a little example for you guys. I tried to pick easier numbers, but does anyone want to try calculating the dot product for this image? I'll give you guys like a minute to actually math it out. Yeah, that's right. Good job. Yeah, so the value of our new pixel is now 26, and that's basically what convolutional neural network does. The filter just convolves through the image and keeps calculating dot products and uses that to track patterns. All right. So yeah. So an important thing is that now that we're calculating dot products, aren't we shrinking like 3 by 3 pixels into a really, really small image? Isn't our feature map a little too small? Yeah, that is true. So that's why we have something called padding. So padding is added to just kind of amplify the image back again and to make sure that we don't make an image too small. Our new convolved feature might be too small, and we don't want that. So we add padding back into the feature map just to make sure that it doesn't shrink too much. And another important thing is called stride. So stride is basically the rate at which we're going through the image. So a stride of 1 might be we're going 1 pixel by 1 pixel. A stride of 2 would be we'd go by 2 pixels by 2 pixels. So a stride can be important because it'll show how much value we give to each pixel in the image. So a larger stride might be that we're going faster through the image, but we cover more of the image, or we might want to look at each specific pixel and how it relates to the pixels next to it. So these are just some different types of filters. You can have no padding and no strides. You could have random padding and you can have no strides, half padding and no strides. There's various different ways. You guys can definitely learn more about this. Um, there's also arbitrary padding, no strides, and also transpositions. So yeah, there's a lot of different filters that you guys can use. So another important thing to note is that when we're adding a convolutional layer, you can think of it as in a hierarchical system. Why? So let's take this image of a bicycle, right? And so when we first look at our first layer of a convolutional neural network, we have very simplistic systems, right? We have like a circle, we have like the handlebars, we have the pedals maybe. And when we go into the next layer, we're breaking it down even further. So we look at each specific tire, we look at each component of each subsystem. So the further you go down to into a convolutional neural network, the more layers you add, you're basically breaking the image down into smaller and smaller portions and looking for more and more patterns within it. And you can detect, again, beyond simple geometric shapes, you can actually detect more complex things in the image. So as a result, the structure can become a little hierarchical. All right, so now that we went over convolutional layers, we can go a little bit over pooling layers. So basically, pooling layers shrink the size of an image with a specified operation. And typically there's two types of pooling. So there's max pool, where you take the maximum value from the window. So you're taking the maximum value from the window and you're using that in your feature map. And there's also average pool, where you take the average of the window, the value in the window. You take the average of the values and you put that in your new layer. I do believe there's also minimum pooling where you take the minimum of the values in the window, but I believe the most popular would be average and max pool. And so the final thing is also flattening. So images are three-dimensional. What do we mean by three-dimensional? They have width, they have height, but they also have the color values. They have RGB. And the neural network can only process one-dimensional data, right? So we can only take numbers and we can just output more numbers. We're not like inputting like geometric shapes and outputting geometric shapes. So we flatten this kind of accumulated filters into a 1D array. We're squishing it down into a 1D array. So it's something that a neural network can actually process. And then we can input that into a feed-forward neural network, like I went through earlier. So we just went through a completed CNN. We have our input, we have the max pooling, and then we have the convolutional layers, we have max pooling again, and then we input that into a feed-forward neural network and we have our output. And that's how we have a CNN, that's how a CNN works, and that's how we find patterns in data. So what are some applications for CNN? Well, as you might have guessed, obviously, facial detection. It's really great for facial detection. In general, image detection. CNNs are really good for detecting what's in an image, classifying, is this a dog or is this a cat? It's really good for image detection. Again, object detection, so it's really good for detecting, is this a cat, is this a dog, is this a duck? It's also really good for segmenting different parts of like an image. So if an image has like a cat, a dog, and a duck, it can segment each different part. It could be like, okay, this part is a cat, this part is a dog, this part is something else. It's also surprisingly really good at audio classification. So it can take the different frequencies and kind of classify, okay, is this like, what is this audio saying? What is it doing? Is this like a dog's bark or something like that? So let's go over a quick recap of everything we kind of went over today. So a convolutional neural network is specifically designed to go through images and recognize what's in images and using the relations between pixels and patterns and finding features in the images. filters pass over the images and extract patterns. So you're looking at, again, patterns between pixels and trying to find out, is this a feature? Is this an ear? Is this a eye? And the patterns are condensed by pooling, right? You're squishing these layers of filters back into a 1D array so that you can input that into a neural network and finally get some output. So this is just a quick reminder. We have Sky's No Limit this quarter. Kevin, do you want to go?
Yeah. So for anyone who's new or hasn't heard of it, Sky's No Limit, we do it every quarter. It is just a competition where we teach you how to build a neural network from scratch. And then you present at the end of the quarter. Instead of one of these normal instructional meetings, we'll have a meeting where anyone who participated will come and present what they did. There is $550 in prize money for the first, divided among the first 4 winners. So first place, second place, third place, and fourth place gets some kind of prize. And there's no experience necessary because every week, I think the first one was today, right before these meetings, we have the workshop meetings where we teach you how to build a neural network and show you how and walk you through the process. And this quarter, the theme is Cat is out of the bag. So we help you figure out how to brainstorm, how to come up with an idea for building a neural network, what that actually means, et cetera, et cetera. All in these workshops, or if you already know how to do this stuff, you know how to make a neural network, you've done it before, you can simply make a neural network and submit it to the competition, come present at the end of the quarter and have a chance to win. I'm going to say right now, as the quarters go on, we have fewer and fewer people who participate. So if you're interested and you do end up participating, you end up having a pretty good chance of winning something. This case, the thing that you're winning would be money. Yeah, we've got the specifics here. Any questions? Cool.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Please, guys, join Sky's No Limit. It's really great. But okay, so we have a quick collab that would be we want all you guys to go through. So just type this link up. I'm gonna have it up for a minute, and then I'll show you exactly how to make a copy into your drive, so then you guys can make your own edits to the collab. Kevin's also writing the link on the board, so yeah, in case you guys like miss it. It's once you guys open up the collab, just make sure to go to File and save copy in Drive, and I'll just make your own copy so that we don't have everyone, editing the main collab. Is everyone good? Does everyone have the collab? All right. All right, looks like, okay. Just be sure to raise your hand if you guys are having any problems. All right. So I'll just go through the collab with you guys, and there'll be some parts where you guys have to fill in stuff. So I'll give you guys a few minutes when we have those parts. All right, so let me just... All right, so we just start off with just importing TensorFlow NumPy. So this is just importing stuff. So we can just quickly run that. Yep, and we're just making sure that we're not using too much memory. And we're also importing various libraries to get our data set. So that's just what we're importing. And here, we're just going to have it access our Google credentials because we're just going to basically take the data set and kind of put it into our drive. So it'll be easier to access. So just Yeah, give it your credentials. All right. And yeah, when installing Patul here, it just extracts the data from the zip file in your drive. All right. Okay. So now that we get to this part, we're basically looking at our data set. We're like, okay, what's in our data set?
If anyone's having difficulty getting here, raise your hand and I'll come around and help you out. Yeah.
Yeah, just be sure to raise your hand. Kevin will be running around to help anyone. Yeah. All right. So now that we get to this part, we're essentially looking at our data and we're looking at the images in our data. So we're looking at what's in here. So if we run plt.imshow image, we can see that this is a data set of expressions, especially happy or sad images. So as you can see, this is happy. But the image looks a little weird because NumPy arrays store the images in BGR and not RGB. And so we're just quickly converting the images back to RGB so that we get the proper images. So we have the proper skin color and everything here. Is everyone good with this so far? All right, cool. All right, so we're just getting into data pre-processing now. We're just removing the image types that don't really like support or aren't supported or they have problems. And so we're just cleaning up the image here. And we just keep cleaning up the data set. And now we're just taking this updated data set and putting it back into our drive. All right. Now we're just getting a data iterator. So this is just going to iterate through the images. And all right, so here we have batch equals data iterator dot something. So does anyone know what we're going to put here? Does anyone know what we're supposed to call here? Because we're trying to look for the next batch rather than the next image. So what would we do? It's kind of in the text right above there. So anyone want to give it a go? Yeah? Yep. So you just call next right here.
Don't forget your parentheses.
Yep. Don't forget parentheses when you're calling a method or a function. So once you run it, you're grabbing the next batch. You're iterating between different batches, and we can test this by just running. And if you get an output, you're like, okay, these are. I do have my batch of data. So as you can see, we have two classes here. We have happy as 0, and we have an image of class 1, which is sad. All right. So as you can see, there's various different images that are associated with either happy or sad. All right. So now we want to scale our data because we want to make sure that our data we're iterating through the pixels in each image. So does anyone know how we're going to scale the data? It's also in the text right here. We want to divide each pixel value by a certain value. Does anyone know what we want to divide our pixel values by? Yeah? Yep, right here. So you want to divide it by 255.
And again, if you ever get stuck or something doesn't run properly or you missed something that was typed in, raise your hand and I'll come back.
Yep. So now we're divided by 255 and we're just getting the next batches. So we just keep iterating. And so we have 6 batches here if we run the length of our data. All right, so now it's time to get into the actual training. So we want to split our data set into a training set, a validation set, and a testing set. I'd say 70% for the training, 20 for the validation, and 10 for the testing set. So does anyone want to tell me what you'd put in the percentage values for each specific data set? Yeah? Yep, so you do 0.7. So we want decimal values, right? Not whole numbers. So we do 0.7, 0.2, and 0.1. And so we're just splitting up our data set into different parts so that we can train the model, and then we can validate it, and then we can test it. All right. Okay. So this is where we say, okay, we're telling our certain model, we're like, okay, how much data do we take in this partition? So does anyone know what we're going to put, what value we have to put in here? What variable tells us the size of our training data set? Yes, so you put train size in here. Right here. Okay. Okay, and here we already see we take val size, but we want to make sure that we skip the first portion that we already associated with train size. So what variable do you guys think we should put in here to skip over? Anyone? Yeah? Yep. So we're going to skip over train size, and we're just going to look for the validation size portion of our data set. And I'm just going to quickly do this part for you guys. So you're going to skip over the train size portion and the val size portion so that you can just only grab the test size portion for we're basically looking for everything left over. So if you put in all the variables and you run it, it should be good. And if you run the length of test, you should get 1 now. Is everyone set on this? Everyone got this? All right, cool. Just be sure to don't hesitate to raise your hand, and Kevin will come over if anyone has any problems. All right, so now let's actually create the model. So let's start by just importing any packages that we need. And now we actually have to create our model. So we're setting our model to sequential. This basically means that you're creating a linear stack of layers. So we're just adding more and more layers to the neural network. So this means that you can add each layer one by one, which is a lot easier than just because when we look at the structure of a neural network, we want to just keep adding layers one by one. All right. So this is the main coding part of this Colab. So I have an example for you guys right here of a convolutional layer right here. And I want you guys to basically build the model. So first part, we have model.add, and we want to add like a max pooling function. So does anyone know what goes within this add? Like what do we add here? There's a hint right there. All right. It's fine. It's fine if nobody knows. It is kind of a little bit more complicated. So we basically just call the max pooling 2D function. And so we're just creating a pooling layer here and using the maximum value. So we're taking the maximum value and condensing it. And I'd like for you guys to basically use this for an example and basically use it as an example to create another convolutional layer. So I can do one for an example. So we have 32 filters, right? So we want 32 filters, so we can put in 32. And we want this to be a 3x3 filter. So we add a 3x3. And then we want a stride of 1 pixel, so we're going to add a 1. And we want our activation to be ReLU. Right here. We did go over activation functions in our last meeting, but it essentially basically it's a loss function. It calculates the loss. So that's just our first convolutional layer right there. You guys can just quickly write in the second one as well. It's basically the same. Take the same input values. Yep. All right. And so here, what we're going to do is we're going to add a flatten layer. So this layer basically flattens all the filters back into the neural network, so we can put it back into the feed for forward neural network. So this is basically the convolutional neural network we saw in the slides, just basically in code. So if you run this, we have our convolutional neural network all set. And so this is a loss function that we have here. So this is used to configure the model for back propagation. We did go over atom and cross entropy in our last meeting, but essentially it's just a loss function. It calculates the loss and it trains the model. And now we can just print out the summary of our model here. We have our convolutional layers, we have our pooling layers, we have our flattened layers, and we have our dense layers. And now, I don't know, yes, there's a slight bug here. I think this is supposed to be, I thought that I updated this to be, okay, there you go, okay.
On this cell, if you're looking at it, it should say keras.utils dot, what was it again? Dot vis underscore utils. So just delete the last, yeah, just delete the vis underscore utils. So it says keras.utils. Raise your hand if you have any questions or issues with that.
Yep. And so when you run that, you should just have like an image of like your neural network. So you have your pooling layers, you have your convolutional layers, and this is just an image of your entire neural network. Snap. This was not updated too.
The next cell was also not updated. So you're going to have to do a new line beforehand and just define logdir equal to, well, it's written up here, but /content/drive/my/drive /logs typed out exactly like that. If you need any help with that or have any confusion, raise your hand and I'll combine help. Still see people typing. Can I get a thumbs up when people have finished typing that in and have run that cell? Okay, waiting for a couple more. See a lot of thumbs. Cool.
All right, cool. Yeah, so that was just a bug on my end, my bad. So now that we have everything set, we can start training. So if you run the cell right here, it's going to start training for 20 epochs. If you increase that number, it's going to train for even more epochs. You can also you can reduce it if you want to have it train quicker, but we can just have it run now. Your model will be trained. And I think it'll take a few minutes because 20 epochs does take some time. And as you can see in each epoch, you see the accuracy is changing, the loss function also, though you can see the loss is decreasing over time. It starts off pretty high, but it eventually reaches a much lower number. And you can also see your on your validation data set, you can see how the accuracy and the loss changes over time as well.
Any questions so far?
All right, that's great.
But it's like
Yeah. Yeah, it's a float error because there's some loss stuff. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so keep in mind it isn't actually 100% accurate. There's some floating point errors right there. But you can think of it as a pretty high accuracy in my opinion. And so you can look through the history. So this is just all the different values it predicted. And now let's look at the loss graph. So let's look at the actual loss function. So as you can see over time, the loss your model experienced decreased and decreased and decreased till it's like almost zero. So this shows like as you back propagate through the function, you can basically decrease your loss and kind of fine tune it to predict the right values. You can obviously change the number of epochs. You can change maybe you can add a layer, convolutional layer, you can delete a layer, and you can see, okay, does that change the actual value of the model? And okay, so now let's test the model on like a random photo from our test data set. So this is just importing the image. Okay, and you have an image of a girl smiling. And yeah, I think it should have been converted. Yeah, I don't know why. Huh. Oh well, I guess you just put Smurf. uh, and it did not test properly. So this is a happy image, but it somehow predicted sad. So this shows that the accuracy of the neural network isn't actually 100%. You can definitely change values. You can change the activation function too. There are other very popular activation functions other than ReLU, and you can use it to kind of fine tune your neural network and see if you can predict a little bit better. Yeah, definitely is not very high accuracy. As you can see, it did predict some images right, but some images not so right. But yeah, feel free to take a couple more minutes to kind of fine tune a couple more values in the neural network. But that's it for convolutional neural networks. And thank you so much, guys. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Thank you. Kevin, could you just go to the last slide? Yeah. Please fill out our feedback form if you guys have the time. Follow us on Discord. Keep up with our Linktree, and thank you so much.
Awesome.